Okay, let's talk about another film on the list. Kurosawa is represented. I think his highest ranked is it Rashomon or Seven Samurai at 17?
Seven Samurai at 17, yeah.
Rashomon at 26.
And then I think he has Ugetsu down at the bottom of the list.
But that's not Kurosawa.
No, that's not Kurosawa. That's Mitsuguchi.
Yeah, that's a good movie. That's a very good movie too, though.
I tell you what, the one true master of foreign film for me, because this is the one director, foreign language director that I've seen everything he's done that's available, is Kurosawa. And
right.
Actually, I mean, you just can't argue with Seven Samurai and Rashomon. But
no.
I return to Ron all the time. I love Throne of Blood.
Throne of Blood. I love that. Yeah.
And just to speak outside of, those are all great movies, but they're all samurai movies. But he did a lot of movies that weren't samurai.
Akiru.
Stray Dog.
And Akiru.
Akiru. Why isn't that on here? That's not on here, is it?
It's not in the top 50, and I think that's because a lot of people have now branded. When they think of Kurosawa, they think instantly of the samurai, but they haven't investigated the fact that he did a lot of noir movies. He did a lot of that.
He did Stray Dog, which is one of the most influential crime films of all time. I mean, no one ever talks about that anymore.
And then High and Low.
High and Low is another one based on an Ed McBain novel. I mean,
exactly. So, and then Akiru, which is not a genre movie at all. I mean, it's not a war movie. It's not a noir movie. It's a human personal story, and that's the kind of movie that's gotten lost in his resume because a lot of people. When they see the title Akiru and they learn that it's not a samurai movie, they immediately go to the thing. It's like, oh, it must not be one of the greats. But that is his greatest movie, I think.
There's a lot of people who would agree with you on that, so yeah.
And you talk about the beloved movies, we mentioned this earlier, and how they're missing from the list, like the Lawrence of Arabia's and Casablanca, and, to a lesser extent, even though no less beloved, The Wizard of Oz and Gone with the Wind. But the beloved movie that actually did make the list, and it made the top 20, is Singin' in the Rain.
And even that is a big step down from Singin' in the Rain, which used to be up there in the top 10. I think it was in the top 10 from 62 to at least 82, and maybe up until 92. But that's really kind of a step down for Singing in the Rain. And I think that is because there's a lot of people who just positively won't watch any musical no matter what because they think it's going to make them feel gay. I'm just being honest here. I'm just saying that a lot of people will not watch a musical. Hey, I've got a movie to turn you on to. I've got a great movie. What is it? Oh, well, first of all, it's a musical. Nah, I don't want to watch it.
There are people that are like that, yeah.
Well, this is further confirmation, though, because I think it's the only musical on the list, that it is widely considered the greatest of all time, and a musical genre. And for me, personally, Singing in the Rain kind of epitomizes what pure joy feels like. I mean, there's such joy in that movie for me when I watch it. It just lifts you, that movie.
It's funny, when you look at the list of these movies, there's not many movies on here that correspond to that feeling of pure joy. A lot of the movies on this list are dark. They're deathly. There's not a lot of, and I also think that has to do with the personal the zeitgeist that's going on, where the great movies have to deal with the darkest things, and even I am in my own choices. I have to say that I do think that the best movies are really dark and kind of depressing,
right?
Really. But
for me too,
but we forget,
And looking at them, I'm thinking, what does this say about me? That I'm just extremely morose, but there are obviously lighter fare that I particularly adore, but
Some Like It Hot would be the other one that I would think on this list that isn't.
Yeah.
And 8.5 to an extent, and.
Well, even 8.5 is kind of eaten up by darkness because it's about a guy.
Yeah, but it's Fellini, though, so there's something. No, that's true. I mean, there's a lot of truth in that, but I mean, there is compared to some of the other stuff. But no, I would have to say, like, Singing in the Rain and Some Like It Hot would be, I guess, the lightest, and in general, maybe not the general. I don't know.
That's a real shame. I mean, that's a real shame because you can say, well, sometimes we go to the movies to feel great, and it's too bad that there are not enough movies on this top 50 list that make us feel great to be human, not movies that make us feel like, oh, man, it's such a dark and awful thing to be human, But if you look at the top 50, that's what these are.
Well, it was interesting. I saw this. I forget who did it. It might have been Time Magazine. I don't know if it was related to any particular publication, but somebody did an interview with Woody Allen on camera, and they asked like 12 off-the-wall questions, and they said, "Tell me a movie that you love, that you always have to defend, and a movie that you're not crazy about, and you have to always defend that too." And he said the movie that I'm not crazy about is Some Like It Hot.
Wow.
He's always defending that. Isn't that something, Woody Allen?
That is surprising. I'm surprised that he doesn't find it funny and charming and all of those things. But it really is. It really is all of it. It really is all of those things. It's got great music in it, and it's constant. It's got constant great actors popping up and just seeing 2 or 3 scenes and it's amazing. Like just from a production point of view, like the cinematography, costume design, everything involved in it is just top notch. I think it's obviously along with Sunset Boulevard, which doesn't make the top 50 here, but with Sunset Boulevard, it's obviously Billy Wilder's best work. So I mean, but it's funny, you guys do point out those two. That's the only 2 movies that are like happy movies on this list. There's no happy movies. For the first time, they split up the Godfather movies, so you could vote on them individually.
Right.
The Godfather came in at 21. Godfather 2 at 31. Apocalypse Now ahead of both of them. Is this something else? Is this something else? Tarkovsky is represented 3 times. I think Godard is represented 3 times actually, but so is Coppola. Coppola's represented 3 times on this list. That's great.
Right.
Yeah. No, that is.
I mean, do you think that the splitting up, because they used to be able to do things where they would, they were 2 inextricably linked movies like The Godfather and Godfather 2. They used to say, oh, it's okay that you put them together, but now they said, no, don't do that. So do you think that hurt The Godfather in actually making it into the top 10 or something like that,
I suppose it could have. I mean, it made the director's top 10 overall.
Right.
The Godfather did, and Apocalypse Now, actually. I will watch The Godfather 2 any day, like any time. And actually, I will choose The Godfather 2 over The Godfather most of the time. Not to say anything less about The Godfather, because that's perfect, but it's my personal taste.
Right.
I find The Godfather easier to watch. I find The Godfather just to be, yes, it's a profound movie. I think it's the movie that says everything about the dark side of the American dream that talking about Goodfellas says. And in a way, I feel like Goodfellas is a retread. But that said, I still think Goodfellas is great. But I feel like The Godfather is the movie, whereas The Godfather 2, great movie, no question about it. We're splitting hairs here. But The Godfather 2 is a really a much more difficult movie. It's not about the dark side of the American dream. It's about a son learning what his father already knew.
Yeah.
Well, it is about the dark side of the American dream, though. It is about absolute power. It is really the essence of all these movies that we're talking about. Goodfellas is sort of, at the time, was the antidote. It would have been the opposite of the Godfather movies, because let's be very honest, the Godfather, as far as the mafia is concerned, is a fairy tale, and Goodfellas at the time was a much more realistic depiction of organized crime in America. At the time it was released, of course, as any movie like that, it has this it also has this mythic stature to it. It's just the way things are. But in Godfather 2 is the perfect film about the dark side of the American dream. That's really the foreshadowing of you could say, investment banking, insider trading, everything that's wrong with that we complain about the last 30 years of American business, how CEOs behave. Michael Corleone is really the precursor to all that.
Yeah, but Jerry, let me bring this up, though. But Jerry, let me bring this up, though. The movie is obviously about the relationship between the father and the son, because half of the movie deals with Michael Corleone in the quote unquote present, and then Vito Corleone in the quote unquote past. So and it's edited in such a way where it's really about Michael learning about the business and going his way about his life.
Yeah, but different from his father, though. Much different, because his father included everybody.
He's veering away from what his father believed in, really. Yeah. To the point where he actually kills his own brother, you know?
Yeah, well, he kills his own brother. And that's a debate right there to have. Going back and forth on that. But no, it's very interesting. His father is very, how shall we say it, and especially as of late, the father, Vito, is very embracing. He wants partners. He wants all this. Michael is as the movie progresses, is increasingly isolating himself, almost in this Howard Hughes like that. But he is killing. I mean, the great line when, Tom Hagen says, "Mike, you won. Do you want to kill everyone?" He goes, "No, just my enemies," which is everyone.
Well, and it's in the first paragraph of Pauline Kael's review, and I think that it spoke very articulately. It cut right to the core of the Michael character, because she talks about the first image of the movie where we're led behind that closed door and we see Pacino's face and we think, is it just our imagination or is Michael starting to rot? Oh my God, that's such a beautiful phrase, and that's it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it. But the movie for me, Godfather 2, actually crystallizes and expands the themes of the first one in a very special way. I mean, you really do have like a history of America in the Godfather 2.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's true.
Yeah.
That's true, because
you have a huge history.
Because the original Godfather really takes place in the span of a couple of years, whereas the sequel takes place in the span of 50 years or 40.
The first half of the American century. I mean, almost practically. Yeah.
Let's talk about Hitchcock. I mean, Hitchcock obviously made the top spot with Vertigo, which but he also made. Let's see, Psycho's on the list at 35. Is that it for Hitchcock? Those two?
That's it for Hitchcock on this list.
Do you agree with the inclusion of those two above all others?
Well, I personally would put Rear Window.
Yeah, someone in the chat room
as a movie that deserves to be in the top 50, and it would personally be my number one Hitchcock movie, because I think I think Hitchcock is all about the movies themselves. You know what I'm saying? Watching a Hitchcock movie is always about watching a movie about movies in some ways.
True.
And Rear Window is the crowning achievement in that, because really what we're watching there is James Stewart in an apartment with no television, with no source of entertainment. He can't leave. All he can do is look out his window, and all he can do, instead of changing the channels on his television, all he can do is use his binoculars to take a look into other people's lives. There are little mini movies that are going on in each of these apartments, and I think that's an amazing commentary and way ahead of its time. You know, this was done in the age of television, so it was way ahead of its time in talking about television's effect on people.
Well,
it's
the greatest
in that movie.
It's the greatest voyeur movie ever made.
It is. It is the original voyeur movie. You know what movie? I don't know if I would put it on this list, but I was thinking about this last week. The Birds is an absolutely terrifying movie if you really think about it. Here are these creatures, you know, you don't even think about, and then one day they snap. That's a very frightening premise. I'm sorry, you know what I mean?
I just rewatched it a couple of weeks ago, and I like it very much. I mean, there's and I know that it's an incredibly beloved Hitchcock movie now, and I think it was greatly successful upon its release too. I mean, it was a big event.
It was his last really huge hit, I think.
But you think about with Vertigo. That was not a big success upon its first release. No,
and that's a great film too. I love that movie.
Hitchcock was very brokenhearted about it. I mean, it was a very kind of personal feeling film for him, and that enjoyed a restoration as well and theatrical re-release.
Again, another movie that got re-released in the '90s on the big screen, and
it was awesome.
That might be one of the reasons that it's on this list so high up.
No, but I just think that the idea of the Birds, I was just thinking about it, and I was like, you know, that's a very, very terrifying premise. I mean, I'm not saying it should be on the list. I'm just saying if you really think about it, he really was. Some of the premises for his films are absolutely terrifying. I do find that one, because I guess that's the earliest one I watched, and I mean, just the thought of it, thinking about it today, wow, you know, you're just minding your own, and all of a sudden, one day, the Birds, these peaceful creatures.
I want to bring up two things about Hitchcock. I'll bring up the first thing first, and then I'll talk about the other movie that's on the list, the Psycho movie.
Right.
But there's two movies coming out about Hitchcock, and one we've talked a lot about, which is based on the Stephen Rebello book on the making of Psycho with Anthony Hopkins and Helen Mirren. There's another one that I thought was being made for the BBC. It's actually being made for HBO. It's airing in October, where Toby Jones plays Alfred Hitchcock.
Oh, yeah.
And Toby Jones is an astounding actor, so I'm looking forward to seeing his portrayal of Hitchcock. And Tippi Hedren is being played by Sienna Miller. And I wasn't aware of this, but Tippi Hedren cooperated with the production all the way through. It's about how Alfred Hitchcock sexually harassed and abused her during the shooting of
okay.
Right.
I did not know this. Okay.
Well, that's one of the great stories in Hitchcock's. I mean, I first learned about that reading Donald Spoto's book, The Dark Side of Genius, which was one of the first big bios of Hitchcock. And you learned in that he actually had designs. He had designs on every one of the females that he cast in the leads of all of his movies. He a lot of those females, Grace Kelly and Kim Novak, they all kind of look alike, in some ways, and that's the reason. The reason for that is because that's what he wanted, and that's what he wanted in his personal life. He wanted those kind of people. This is according to Donald Spoto, at least. And,
according to Tippi Hedren as well. I mean, it's obvious.
Yeah, I'm just like Christopher Hill in the chat room just said that too about that. So, wow, okay. I mean, I've heard some about this. I didn't realize she had come out and actually said this.
Well, apparently the story is that he really was forward with her, like in the back seat of a car or something, and really forced himself upon her. And when she refused, she was treated like hell throughout the remainder of the production. But
to the point, to the point where he actually, like the scenes with the birds where she's caught in the room and everything with just birds pecking at her and everything. That was done over and over and over again. It's kind of a sort of an Ersatz revenge against her spurning him.
Yeah.
I'm having flashbacks to our Nancy Allen interview all of a sudden. But no,
yeah. But anyway.
I'm sorry.
So that comes out in October on HBO.
I'm looking forward to that now. Okay.
What's
too.
that called? Isn't that called The Girl?
Yes.
It's called The Girl, which is a great title, by the way. It's a great title for that movie.
Yeah. So Psycho, Psycho was revolutionary, and also when we look at Psycho now, we try to see different layers with it, and there's one viewpoint of looking at Psycho now that's interesting, is that it's a movie about repressed homosexuality, which is especially telling when you think, well, yeah, Anthony Perkins, the lead in the movie, and he does some very effeminate things in the movie. I mean, I think of the shot of him walking up the stairs and then stopping midway, and there's a very kind of feminine sway about him. And I'm thinking, did Hitchcock intuit that Perkins might have been gay, and was he playing up on that and commenting on it in a way? I mean, it's really kind of a far out there reading of the film, but maybe not so much. And maybe I think movies benefit from different kinds of readings and considerations, and that's.
I agree with that. I agree with you, and that's why we do this show. I think also is because God forbid there's only one way to look at something. I mean,
yeah. I'm
not
saying that Hitchcock faked the moon landing, okay? Nobody write me a letter, please.
Wait. Okay, yeah. I mean, I'll go with you on that.
My guess is, I think Hitchcock had an immense way of sort of sussing out what an actor could or couldn't do, and what an actor could bring to a role. And I totally believe, because at the time that Psycho came out, and Perkins was upfront about this later on in his life, he had yet to sleep with a woman. Now, eventually he did, marry, he had kids, but he also died of AIDS. I don't know what that means. I don't know if he was gay or not. I really don't. But the fact remains that he later came out and said by the time he did Psycho, at that age, he had still not yet slept with a woman. And I think that it's quite possible that Hitchcock, in interviewing Anthony Perkins for the role, asked him about this, and maybe decided to go with him because of the answer that he got. Now, I would think that the answer would have been quite frank,
Yeah, and then of course Perkins said no, so Hitchcock offered him Tippi Hedren, and that was another kind of big controversy. No, I'm kidding.
That would have been awesome. I could just see the people running the press running with that one.
That's a whole other movie.
That's just it. If that happened today, Hitchcock would be slung through the mud. I mean, he.
Oh yeah, I mean, of a lot of this, it's a lot of stories like this would be, yeah.
Yeah,
it's true. All of these things. That's kind of what makes Hitchcock amazing, is because he was able to. Well, it might have just been when the time that he was popular, no one was paying attention to his private life. Maybe because he was an overweight older gentleman that no one looked at him with any kind of sexuality at all.
British,
You know what I'm saying, though?
I know exactly what you're saying. I also think it goes back to something that Jamie and I talked about many, many years ago. It doesn't, as long as your movies or you make money, you can get away with a lot. I mean, you can rant and rave and pull all sorts of stunts.
There's also we can't imagine Hitchcock getting laid, I guess is what it all comes down to.
You're right, man. No one looked at Hitchcock, including all the women that he wanted and even cast in their leading roles. No one ever looked at him with a sort of sexual eye, like, hey, man, you want to go for a role in the hay? No one looked at him for that.
That's what I would love to hear a comedian, like an impersonator. God, I can't talk. Do like Hitchcock having sex or something. That would be the greatest impersonation of all time.
Yeah, highest rated show.
There's one Kubrick film on the list, and it's 2001. What is most surprising?
Only one Kubrick film, though. That's
what is
crazy.
most surprising to me is that Dr. Strangelove is not on the list.
Yeah, that surprised me too.
That's amazing. I think it's amazing that and Paths of Glory are not on the list too. I mean,
that's a good point.
If you're going to pick three movies out of Kubrick's list, of movies, you'd have to pick those three. Those would be the ones that are just, absolutely essential movies.
Well, and generally known as the greatest satire ever. I mean, Dr. Strangelove. So, and Paths of Glory, of course, is known as one of the great war movies ever made.
Mm-hmm.
But they went with, obviously, and there's no argument here necessarily, but they went with 2001 as their number 6 pick. And that's about as much of a game changer as you could possibly make. It influenced Spielberg, Lucas, and Spielberg therefore influenced all of our generation of filmmakers. The reverberations of 2001 are enormous, so there's no argument with that pick. But it's interesting because looking at the individual directors list, a lot of them picked. I saw The Shining pop up, but I saw a lot of Barry Lyndon pop up in their top 10.
Yeah, well, Barry Lyndon is going to be on a lot of directors' lists. I mean, it's a visual feast. That's what I'm surprised. Let me ask you this: was there any Malick on the list?
No.
On anybody's list? Not like even Days of Heaven?
Mm-mm.
No, although I read this, I'm not sure if it's true, but the Tree of Life almost made the top 100 list. Now, I haven't seen the top 100. I've only seen the top 50. But the Tree of Life reportedly almost just missed by one vote making the top 100 list, which is pretty extraordinary, given that it's a movie that was released last year. So, I mean, I think you could expect to see Tree of Life beyond
in years to come.
Years to come. I think that maybe the next decade. That's a strong possibility.
I mean, I love the simplicity and the kind of the simple poetry of Badlands, and you stack that up against the Tree of Life, and it is a really fascinating double feature because you could see that the same preoccupations are there. The same kind of tone in a way, but it's much different in terms of ambition, certainly. And I don't think anyone could see Badlands and think it's a pretentious movie necessarily.
No.
Yeah,
The Third Man. The Third Man is not on here.
Absolutely. Yeah. I agree.
Yeah, The Third Man didn't make the list. In fact, no Carol Reed made the list.
Yeah, I was surprised by this.
I personally love The Fallen Idol, for instance, from.
That's a very good movie. I love that movie.
I think that's my favorite of his movies, and I'm a big fan of Oliver, but I wouldn't expect Oliver to be anywhere near this list. But
Oliver wasn't Oliver
Man,
Norman? No, okay.
Grand Illusion's not on here, and that was another one I thought would be a shoo-in, but
another movie that I think gets lost in the shuffle, like that suffers from the same thing that Children of Paradise suffers from.
Yeah, I mean, these are all great.
They're too French or something.
Yeah, no, Grand Illusion. I mean, you talk about a film that's something that says, what does it say about humanity? I mean, you would think that would be. I would think Grand Illusion would be up there, but obviously not. The rule for the game is on there. The rule for the game is number 4.
Now, let me ask you guys this, okay? Have you guys seen the rules of the game?
Yes.
It's been many years, but yeah.
I saw it as a kid, actually.
Right? I haven't seen it since I was like probably 20 or 21.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember seeing it at that age and thinking, what the hell? This is one of the greatest movies? I don't get it. And
I think as you get older, I feel the yeah.
Do you feel like that's a movie that just gets that's a movie for when you're like 40 and you're looking back?
Yes, because I think about it. I get it more now than when I saw that with a double feature of that, like in Grand Illusion, or our mom took us to see it. I mean, this was back, I guess, in 1983, when you still had like revival theaters and everything, and we went to go see that one day. And, I didn't get Rules. Grand Illusion I understood, but Rules of the Game, I was only like 12 or 13, so it didn't really sink in. Now, I will tell you in my 30s, why the movie's popular makes perfect sense. It is something as you get older, a lot of these movies, I'll be very honest with you. Some of these movies, if I had seen as a young child, I would not have appreciated at all. I wouldn't have, I hadn't lived yet really to understand what they were saying, some of them,
Yeah.
As you get older, I think you understand, and I think it's very important. We talk about there are films you see at certain times of your life, and I think it's sometimes important, especially ones you don't like, to go back and watch them many, many, many years later because you might appreciate them having maybe gone through some of the same things that the characters or the films are about.
Yeah,
I think it's true with Rules of the Game.
And it applies to Vertigo, too.
Yeah, definitely,
you reach a certain age and you know what regret and loss is. You don't necessarily know that at 10 years old,
No, you're not, no. But I get Rules of the Game now. I understand why that's on the list.
I watched The Passenger for the first time when I was like 11. I'm not going to get that movie at 11.
No,
but
no.
I've seen it several times since. I saw it the other night, and I get it now. I'm into the vibe of the movie now. I feel it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think Vertigo and The Passenger are movies about loss and trying to recapture what you lost. And if you're even somebody who's 20 years old, you really haven't lost a lot at that age. You don't even realize what you've lost. You might not even realize it when you're 30, but maybe when you hit 40. And that might be the reason that a lot of these movies, a lot of the movies that are on this list are older movies that are not movies that, came out in 99 or from 1990 to present day. It's because they haven't gotten enough time in there to actually for the viewers, that is the critics and the filmmakers here, to actually ascertain what they're actually saying, what these movies are actually saying, and what they mean to their lives, and what they actually teach them as being human people, So.
Okay, I wanted to go through to close off the show. What would, and I think we've spoken of a lot of the titles already, but what would be, included in a list if somebody were to ask you right now, name a few movies or up to 10 movies that you would consider your favorites or the greatest of all time? And Dean, I know you've made a proper list, so give us your proper list first, and then we'll chime in.
Well, I'll just start from the top to the bottom here, but I'm just going to name movies. I'm not going to talk about them at all. But 2001, Fanning Alexander, Ingmar Bergman, Touch of Evil, Orson Welles, The Godfather, Annie Hall, It's a Wonderful Life, Frank Capra, Passion of Joan of Arc, Carl Dreyer, 400 Blows, Francois Truffaut, Lawrence of Arabia, David Lean, Rear Window, Alfred Hitchcock, Napoleon, Abel Gance, Breaking Bad, Lars von Trier. The most obscure movie on my top 20, which is the highest ranking personal choice that I would make, like just a movie that I just can't live without, is called A Little Romance. It's by George Roy Hill from 1979, the greatest romantic movie ever made. Path of Glory, Eraserhead, All That Jazz, Bob Fosse, and The Wild Bunch, Sam Peckinpah. With Some Like It Hot, Treasure of Sierra Madre, and Nashville.
That's a great list, Dean. That's a really great list.
That would be my top 20 movies, I would say. And that's top 20 movies with only one movie in there that's like a personal favorite that I just had to raise up there. They're all personal favorites. They're all movies that I love and go back to again and again and again. But there's only that one movie in there that's like, that's not going to be on anybody else's list, but it's one of my personal favorites that I always try and try and stand up for. I mean, A Little Romance is just an amazing screenplay. And just, it's really the only movie that every time I watch it, I'm a sobbing.
Is it on DVD?
Sobbing mess afterwards, like just a complete mess. So I love those movies.
Is it on DVD?
It is on DVD. It's on Warner Brothers DVD, and it is just unbelievable. I
remember reading a lot about it and a lot about kind of it in reference to Laurence Olivier's condition during the shooting of it. Because he did that movie after Marathon Man, right? And he was ill during Marathon Man.
Exactly, and I mean it's actually quite a physical role for him too, because I mean he's called on to ride a bicycle and get hit in the stomach with a soccer ball and stuff like that, do a little stunt and so forth, and running around and stuff like that. So that's amazing too. But what's amazing about that movie is, if you've never seen A Little Romance, it's about two 12-year-olds in France. One's an American girl, played by Diane Lane in her first movie, and a French boy, played by Thelonious Bernard. They both have really high IQs. The French boy is really into movies, and actually the movie begins with him in the movie theater watching American movies with dubbed into French or with French subtitles. And it's about they're fighting each other in this chaotic world. These two people that felt like no one could understand them. These two kids that felt no one could understand them. And then they find each other, and it's just unbelievable.
No,
even talking about it right now makes me want to cry.
No, that's all right. That's okay. That's cool.
Yeah.
I'm so thankful to you that I'm not the only person on the show that breaks into tears. So thank you.
No, I break into tears all the time. But I want to say something to about your list. Just that you included the Wild Bunch, and in some ways, I guess the reason I like the Wild Bunch is the same reason I like Rules of the Game, because it is about people who have outlived their times. Their way of life is coming to an end. I mean, you could also say the same thing about the miniseries and the movie they made, Brideshead Revisited, is also about that, the end of a era. And this is really the Rules of the Game, and the Wild Bunch is the extreme version of that. And I think the Wild Bunch is one of the best movies ever made.
Well, Wild Bunch would be on your list, Jerry, and I know Lawrence.
Yeah, the Wild Bunch and Lawrence.
Too.
The other one that Nashville's on there, which I think is a great choice, because you don't see any Altman on the Sight and Sound. Annie Hall, Touch of Evil is another awesome choice. Really great choice.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Touch of Evil is also about a guy that's kind of outlived his time and has almost literally outlived his time. He's like around a lot longer than he should have been around, and in fact,
there's that great line that Marlene Dietrich says, "You don't have it's all used up." What is all used up, or you don't have it?
All used up.
Yeah, I mean, how prophetic. Yeah, I mean, oh God, I mean, I always get a chill when she says that.
That's a great movie, and just, I mean, it's a movie that you kind of feel the atmosphere in your bones. That movie, it's great.
Yeah.
There's somebody in the chat room, and Ecstasy, mentioned All That Jazz, and you know what? I think about All That Jazz a lot. I think about that movie in terms of, I always categorize that as one of the most painfully personal movies ever made. I mean, that's the true definition of an autobiographical movie, and warts and all. I mean, that's a true artist.
To the point where it even predicts the filmmaker's eventual death. I mean, he did die of a heart attack only about 5 years after he made that movie. Less than 5 years after he made that movie, he was being zipped up just like Roy Scheider is at the end of that movie. It's like a guy that. It's a movie about a guy that said, "Look, this is who I am, and this is it." And it has a lot of parallels going on to it with 8.5, which made the top 10 list. But I think it's a braver movie than 8.5 is, because I think it just really shows the reality and the irreality of that person's life, that entertainment figure's life, and plus on top of that, just forget about all that stuff. It is one of the most dynamically scored, edited, art directed, choreographed, acted, and costumed movies ever made. I mean, if you have never thought about editing in a movie before, just go and watch all that jazz. And your vision of what great editing, that editor is Alan Hine, who also did Network, among many other things.
That's another one that I thought might be on someone's list, but
yeah.
Well, I think about
amazingly, no Sidney Lumet on here, no Robert Altman. I mean,
yeah, Robert Altman. It's a crime.
It's a crime that he's not on the list.
So I listed like the first 11 titles that came to my mind. These are the movies that greatest favorites, whatever. But these are the movies that I return to more than any other movies. And I guess that would be when you boil it right down, that would be the great criteria for this kind of list.
Right.
And mine are 8.5 because I do adore 8.5. Taxi Driver, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Yeah, I knew that would be on there.
Yeah, first movie that made me fall in love with movies. Heat, I returned to.
Roland knew that would be on there.
The Shining. Now that's the most actual recent addition for me.
Right.
The Citizen Kane, To Kill a Mockingbird, because I think
great movie. I love that movie.
When we talk about humanity, that's the first movie that pops in my head is To Kill a Mockingbird.
Yeah.
Dog Day Afternoon, The Godfather Part 2, and McCabe and Mrs. Miller. That would be first 11.
That's an awesome list.
Would you have a Leone on there? Sergio Leone's not represented in their top 50 either.
I would have Once Upon a Time in the West, or The Good. I would actually have The Good. I would have no problem if it was The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly on there. But it's funny, you guys. We bring up Leone. Leone's. I guess it's Robert Rodriguez and Tarantino who are the first directors, at least that openly admit to being influenced by Leone. And because a lot of people, I guess, film snobs looked down on him for a very long time, is the impression I've always gotten. You bring up Sergio Leone, people would laugh at you.
Mm-hmm.
I guess because they think of him as kind of being sort of pulpy, I guess.
Pulpy, but also, let me ask you this, though. Is it because the releases of Once Upon a Time in the West and Once Upon a Time in America in this country were both butchered? Do you think that has something to do with it?
It could be. I mean, even Good and the Bad and the Ugly didn't appear in its full form until much later.
Right.
But
until like 2003, I think, or 2002.
I think there's a couple of things there with Leone. I think, number one, there might be a sense that his movies, because they're dubbed into English, they don't seem as great as they could seem, because there's something about, at least to American audiences, there's something about dubbing on top of somebody's face that's actually saying something in Italian, and dubbing in English on top of it makes it seem less real.
Is it the Fistful of Dollars as a ripoff of Yojimbo? That was always the lawsuit to Kurosawa, against Sergio Leone. There's that, I guess, too. That's a very big thing. But it is amazing that for this director in the last 30 years has had a critical renaissance. I mean, people really get his films now. While he was alive, there was obviously a small circle, I think, that did, but in death, he's like a legend. I mean,
a lot of good that does for him now. By the way,
I know.
By the way, Once Upon a Time in America, the expanded, restored cut of that premiered at Cannes earlier this year, it was supposed to come out this year, and it's been pushed back to next year because Scorsese looked at it and said we can still do some work on this, especially with the audio.
Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome.